Hello and welcome to another episode of Just Disciple. I'm Dan Sanchez. This is
Kenny Ortiz.
And today we're going to talk about natural theology. And it's not like natural as in organic or having, well, kind of maybe having to do with like the woods and the forest and stuff. Maybe, but Kenny, just tell me what is natural theology?
So typically when people use the term natural theology, they're talking about what are the things we can learn about God from things that are natural, mostly nature, creation, mountains, oceans, animals, but not just nature, but things that are natural. What are the natural ways humans correspond with one another? What are the natural ways different things happen? Those are all sort of things that are a part of natural theology.
So not like my organic soap that I used this morning. Not
no,
quite like that. Okay,
you don't
not
want
that natural.
Not that exactly.
So if you have natural theology, like are there different viewpoints for the theology?
Yeah, there are two primary approaches to natural theology. And natural theology sometimes is also referred to as what we call general revelation. That's kind of another term a lot of scholars use. And we juxtapose that with special revelation, which either are things that God has specially done to reveal himself. Obviously, the greatest example of special revelation that we have available us today is the Bible. The Bible very clearly is a special work of God to reveal himself. Where general revelation is just more generally God has revealed himself. So there are two different approaches that people have to general revelation or to natural theology. Some people think we should base all our theology on things we see in nature or things that we see naturally occurring, the general things that have been revealed to us. Those of us who are Orthodox Christians, those of us who are Bible believers, we don't believe that's the case.
Okay.
But there are a lot of people out there that would say you should only base your theology on what we see out there in the world and what we see naturally occurring. Those of us who are evangelical Christians, those of us who are Bible believers, who really want to be committed to what God has revealed, we would say the Bible is the primary means of where we learn about God. The Bible is what we base our theology on. And natural theology can be helpful, but it should be a supplement or a complement to the special revelation, not the primary. And there are people out there who would say, no, natural theology is a primary, the Bible is a complement. And we believe that it's the exact opposite of that.
Wow. Okay. So we have natural theology, and the two different viewpoints is using it as a secondary source or a primary source.
Right.
And Christians generally take it as a secondary source.
Correct.
What are some practical ways Christians can use to get the most out of natural theology? If they've never considered it before and they want to get everything they can out of nature, what could they do?
Yeah, I think the question I try to teach people to ask is, what must God be like that he created it this way? God created dogs. Dogs are this weird, unique creature that are loyal and lovable and energetic. And what does it teach us about God that he gave us dogs? You think about those kind of things. What must God be like that he created gravity, that he created stars? What must God be like that he made the universe so big? Why would God be doing that? So you ask yourself as you're examining nature. You examine the way a mother loves a baby. That mother loves a child so much. It's a naturally occurring thing. Mothers love their children with this fierce, unconditional love. What does that teach us about God? Are there things that I think most Christians, in my experience, in my opinion, are not curious enough about the natural occurrings of the world? And I think it's really helpful to become a curious Christian. Just ask yourself, why did God do it like that? Because God's not haphazard. He's not random. Everything he's done is for a purpose. And I think shouts to us things about his character and nature. And I think we can learn from naturally occurring things about who God is.
Okay. So every time I have an opportunity, I can ask that question.
Yeah.
All right.
What must God be like that he did this?
Yeah.
I think those are...
That the wind, we can feel it, see it all around us. We can see it outside the windows right now. Mm-hmm. But what does that say about God,
Yeah.
Very interesting. So what are some consequences if we take it as nature as a primary source rather than a secondary source? When does that start to screw people up if they do that?
I think ultimately we begin to believe some things about theology or about God that are really wacky. So, for example, there are things that are naturally occurring in the world that are not things that we should be learning from. For example, when we look at the animal kingdom, there are very few animals that are monogamous. Most animals are mating with all different animals. They're not monogamous, not sticking with one. Well, some people would say, well, the natural world, the animal kingdom, shows that the male creatures are mating with all the female creatures. Well, then human men should do that. Okay, well, no, that's what the Bible is very clear. Special revelation in the Bible teaches that monogamy is God's ideal. One man, one woman within covenant. That's God's ideal design. And anything outside of that is inappropriate, is sinful, and is actually harmful for you. And so our sexual ethics, if we take from natural theology, are going to get really wonky really fast. There I think are a lot of examples of that within the Christian life. That's the one that's the most glaring, I think, in our culture. But I think ultimately, if you take natural theology and general revelation to be the primary, you're going to end up with some really wonky ethics.
So what's funny is I can even think of monogamy being natural, in that usually when a man and woman are together, there's like these feelings of, of longevity. It's we make promises to each other, even if we're not even married. You have this tendency to want to do it. It's like a natural feeling to want to commit your rest of your life to this one person.
Yeah, I think
so. It is kind of natural at the same
sense.
time. But yeah, if the animal kingdom, then there's rare examples of that.
And you've got people out there, a lot of evolutionary biologists that would say, well, humans were evolutionarily designed to mate with lots of people. So you should fight that natural urge you have to commit to one and actually go with what the evolutionary science supposedly says. Like there are people that would say those kind of things. So I think generally when natural theology is the primary, you get into fuzzy, weird conversations.
Yeah. Where do you usually find people, what kind of people take natural theology as the primary route? Are there Christian sects, or is it mainly non-Christian groups?
I think it's mostly people who would call themselves spiritual but are not religious. Okay. People who they believe in a creator, they believe in a God of some sort or in a spiritual realm, but they don't necessarily believe in the God of the Bible. Or they believe in the God of the Bible, but the Bible is wonky and we've changed the Bible. We've gotten the Bible wrong, or we misunderstood the Bible, and therefore the God of the Bible doesn't even stand by the Bible anymore. There are Christians out there, people that claim to be Christians, that would say that. You have some of that thing. You also have a particular section, and this is not really popular in North America, but there's a particular section of European Christians. There's this movement called Transcendentalism that started in the 1800s. That was popular in New England. It's not important, but basically from this movement came people that would say, yeah, we should believe parts of the Bible, but whenever the Bible clashes with what we learned from natural theology, we should discard that part of the Bible, basically. Okay. So we take the parts of the Bible that fit with natural theology, and we get rid of everything else. And that was popular in some parts of France and Germany in the late 1800s, and it has survived through the 1900s, but it's not a super popular movement. But it does exist, and it sometimes is taught in mainstream seminaries in America, unfortunately. There are some real liberal seminaries that teach really, really weird doctrines. Recently, there was a seminary where students were worshiping plants in a chapel service. That's not an exaggeration. That's not hyperbole. There was a seminary in New York where students
the news.
They were literally worshiping and confessing to plants. That seems crazy to some people, I think, but that's happening in the world. And really that has its roots in natural theology being preeminent.
Wow. But natural theology is still good. And there's still a lot we can get from nature about how it reveals God. Yeah,
and the Bible says that.
Right,
actually.
And that was going to be my next question, is what are some of the biblical examples of natural theology?
Yeah, all through the Psalms, multiple times the Psalms talks about how the heavens declare the glory of God. Usually it's referring to the idea of the bigness of the cosmos. I think there are moments in Scripture where we see this. The most clear one to me, though, is in Romans 1. Paul very clearly says that in creation, the invisible attributes of God are on display. And then he says, there's a lot of attributes of God on display, but then he says mainly God's divinity and eternal power. The fact that there is a God who's in control of everything and that he's powerful, that is on display in creation. And even if you don't have the Bible, even if you've never read the law and don't have the Bible, you can look at creation and go, there's a God. he made all this. He is powerful. I should surrender my life to him. And Paul makes that he's using it to make another point, but he's clearly alluding to that there in Romans chapter 1.
Would you say it's also natural theology when like creation groans and longs? Is that part of natural theology, or is that a different piece?
No, I think it's wrapped up into that for sure. When he's talking about that, I mean, when we look at earthquakes that happen and natural disasters, that's creation groaning to be back to the way it was. We screwed it up as humans because we sinned, and there's a curse on all of creation, and creation is now broken because of our sin and our actions. First with Adam, and now with all of us. And yeah, Paul says in Romans that the creation is groaning for the redemption of the sons of God. Like, for those of us who are Christians, for us to be redeemed, because that's the moment where all of creation will be made right again, the way it was back in the Garden of Eden. And creation is longing for the moment. And so I think we learn, as we look at creation, things are broken, people die, and it teaches us that there's consequences to our actions. So I definitely think there's an element of general revelation happening there as well.
All right. Any final thoughts on natural theology?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, there's some people that take it too far and they make natural theology preeminent. But I think that's not the primary problem I see in a lot of Christians. Most people basically ignore natural theology altogether. And again, the Bible is above. Special revelation is above general revelation. But natural theology can be really, really helpful to believers. So I'd encourage everyone to really think about those sort of things.
Awesome. Well, there you go. We've learned about natural theology.